Welcome to the Historian Translated. Please like and subscribe. Without further ado, let's begin.
The founding of the Order of the Dragon and the real history of Count Dracula. In the waning years of the 14th century, Christendom stood on the edge of ruin. The Ottomans were surging into Europe, the Byzantine Empire was in its death throes, and the power of kings was often challenged by both heretics and rival nobles. But from the heart of Hungary, one monarch sought to rally the Christian world against this darkness. Sigismund of Luxembourg, King of Hungary and future Holy Roman Emperor, had seen enough. For years he had fought against the growing Ottoman threat on Europe's doorstep. He had survived uprisings, political backstabbing, and even a humiliating capture during the Crusade of Nicopolis in 1396. Sigismund knew that defending Christendom would take more than armies. It would take unity, and so in the year 1408 he created something both ancient and new, a chivalric brotherhood of Christian rulers and noble warriors. It would be called the Order of the Dragon. On December 12, 1408, Sigismund founded the order alongside his queen, Barbara of Celje. The aim? To defend the cross, to protect the king, and to crush heresy and the Ottoman threat. Its members were handpicked from the noblest families of Europe, kings, dukes, and princes, each bound by oath and honor. Among them was Vlad II of Wallachia, who would become known as Dracula, the Dragon. His son, Vlad III, would become better known by another name, Dracula. Unlike the Templars or Teutonic Knights, the Order of the Dragon was not a monastic force, but a political weapon, designed to unite Christian leaders in a time of fragmentation and fear. Its dragon symbol, ancient and mysterious, became a badge of prestige and menace. As the 15th century dawned, the Order of the Dragon stood as a bulwark against both infidels and internal decay. Though small in number, its influence echoed across royal courts and battlefields. And so, forged in crisis and cloaked in mystery, the Order of the Dragon entered the chronicles of history, not just as warriors, but as symbols of resistance in a crumbling world. Before Dracula, there was Dracula. In the early 15th century, Wallachia, a small but vital principality, stood as a buffer between Christian Europe and the expanding might of the Ottoman Empire. The man at the center of it all was Vlad II, voivode, warrior, and survivor of shifting alliances. Born around 1390, Vlad was a seasoned nobleman raised amidst political intrigue. He served at the court of Sigismund of Luxembourg, the powerful king of Hungary and Holy Roman Emperor, and it was there, in the royal courts of Buda, that his fate was sealed. In 1431, Vlad was inducted into the newly founded Order of the Dragon, a Christian chivalric society created by Sigismund to defend the cross and resist the Ottoman advance. The dragon, ancient and powerful, became the emblem of this elite brotherhood. Members swore to protect Christendom, uphold royal authority, and crush heresy. It was a symbol of prestige, yes, but also a declaration of war against the enemies of the faith. After his induction, Vlad returned home not just as a ruler, but as a dragon knight. His enemies and allies alike began calling him Vlad Dracula, Vlad the Dragon. But the title carried weight. Wallachia was caught between Hungary's demands and Ottoman threats. To survive, Vlad walked a deadly tightrope, sometimes pledging loyalty to the Sultan, other times turning to Hungary for aid. He ruled in a world where betrayal and brutality were the rule, not the exception. He was no saint. His reign was marked by suspicion, assassinations, and political gambits. But the dragon on his chest declared one thing: he would not bow to either empire without a fight. And watching all of this was his son, Vlad III, who would inherit not just the throne, but the name Dracula, son of the dragon. In our next episode, we uncover how Vlad the Impaler earned his legend, and why the dragon became a symbol of both honor and terror in the East. Before the legend of Dracula, there was the boy, torn from his home, shaped by betrayal, and bred in blood. Vlad III was born around 1431, likely in the fortress town of Sighisoara, or the Wallachian capital of Targoviste. He was the second legitimate son of Vlad II Dracula, Prince of Wallachia, and member of the prestigious Order of the Dragon. Wallachia was a fragile buffer state between the Catholic Kingdom of Hungary and the Islamic Ottoman Empire. To hold power here meant choosing the lesser evil, Hungary or the Turks. For Vlad II, the choice would cost him everything. In 1442, amid mounting pressure from Hungary and fearing retribution from the Ottomans, Vlad II traveled to Edirne to negotiate with Sultan Murad II. As a condition of peace, he left his two sons, Vlad III and Radu, as hostages. It was no simple captivity. The boys were taught Arabic, Persian, Turkish, and the Quran. They received military training and were treated with relative care if their father remained loyal. But Vlad III hated his captors. Where Radu adapted, becoming close with the Sultan's son, Mehmed, Vlad stewed in resentment. This formative experience would later ignite his hatred for the Ottomans, and even his own brother. Meanwhile, back in Wallachia, chaos erupted. Vlad II was accused of betraying Christian interests. Hungarian-backed forces led by John Hunyadi invaded. Vlad was deposed and murdered by his own nobles. His son Mircea, blinded and buried alive. Vlad III, now around 16, had lost everything: his father, his throne, and his brother. But he had survived. He had been forged in fire, and now it was time to claim revenge. In 1448, with Ottoman backing, Vlad was sent back to Wallachia to claim the throne. It was short-lived, but the seed had been planted. Tortured, betrayed, and born in war, Vlad III would become something far more than a prince. He would become a scourge, a legend, and a name whispered in fear. Vlad Dracula, once a hostage, now returned with vengeance in his veins. But Wallachia was no kingdom for the weak. To survive here, you had to be monstrous. In the chaos following the Battle of Kosovo, Vlad seized the moment. With Ottoman support, he briefly claimed the Wallachian throne, but it lasted mere months. His rival, Vladislav II, returned with Hungarian support and drove him into exile. For years, Vlad wandered. He trained, fought in minor campaigns, built alliances. In Moldavia, he took refuge with his cousin Stephen. In Hungary, he aligned with John Hunyadi, the very man whose invasion had killed his father. But times had changed. Hunyadi now saw use in the hardened young exile. The Ottomans were growing stronger, and Wallachia, under Vladislav II, teetered in chaos. Vlad was given a chance, one last chance to reclaim his throne. In 1456, Vlad returned, not as a boy, but a warrior. At the Battle of Targsor, he faced his old rival Vladislav II. The duel was swift. Vlad struck him down with his own hand. The throne of Wallachia was his again. But Vlad hadn't forgotten. The boyars, Wallachia's scheming nobles, had betrayed his father. His vengeance was cold, calculated, and horrific. On Easter Sunday, he invited the boyars to a feast. Midway through the meal, his soldiers stormed in. The old and weak were impaled. The rest were marched to Poenari, where they were forced to build his mountain fortress and die. This was Vlad's message: betray me and suffer. He became Dracula, son of the dragon, yes, but also Tepes, the Impaler. His methods were brutal, but effective. Crime vanished. Roads became safe. Merchants and peasants praised his justice, even as diplomats trembled. But Vlad's defiance had limits. When he stopped paying tribute and attacked Ottoman garrisons, Sultan Mehmed II invaded. It was the greatest threat Vlad would ever face. Outnumbered and outmatched, Vlad would turn to darkness once more. What followed was one of the most terrifying episodes in medieval warfare. June 17, 1462. The night air is thick over the Danube plain near Targoviste. Ottoman banners flutter quietly above a massive camp. An army of nearly 90,000 men under Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople. Outnumbered nearly 10 to 1, Vlad Dracula knew he couldn't face Mehmed in a pitched battle, so instead, he chose fear, fire, and fury. His strategy? A night attack, a psychological blow straight to the heart of the Ottoman command. His goal wasn't just to kill, it was to send a message. No one invades Wallachia without tasting blood. Vlad's cavalry swept in like wraiths through the dark. Shouting in Turkish to cause confusion, they cut tents open, ignited fires, and impaled terrified men on their own stakes. Chaos erupted. Smoke choked the air. Vlad himself led the charge directly toward the Sultan's tent, but fate, perhaps treachery, meant the wrong tent was struck. The Sultan escaped, but the damage was done. The Ottomans awoke to a nightmare. Thousands dead, horses missing, fires still smoldering. The psychological impact was immense. Even Mehmed, a hardened conqueror, was shaken. Though it did not end the campaign, the night attack was a masterstroke of asymmetric warfare. It cemented Vlad's reputation, not just as a ruler, but as a terror in the minds of his enemies. He would not defeat the Ottomans outright. But in the darkness of one June night, Vlad the Impaler became legend. Despite the chaos he unleashed upon the Ottomans, Vlad III was still at the head of a vastly outnumbered army. Mehmed II, recovering from the shock of the night attack, pressed forward into Wallachia. He captured the capital, Targoviste, but found it eerily deserted, and worse still, haunted. It was here that Mehmed witnessed Vlad's most infamous spectacle, a forest of the impaled. Thousands of rotting corpses, displayed like grotesque scarecrows, Ottoman soldiers, traitors, criminals. The Sultan reportedly could not stomach the sight and ordered a swift withdrawal. But Vlad's triumph was short-lived. The Ottomans didn't destroy him, but his own people did. The nobility of Wallachia, already weary of his brutality, turned to his cousin Radu the Fair, Vlad's younger brother, who had remained in the Ottoman court and converted to Islam. Radu, backed by Ottoman troops and propped up as a softer, more agreeable ruler, gained support from the boyars. One by one, towns and castles opened their gates to him. Abandoned, betrayed, and hunted, Vlad fled north to Transylvania, seeking the support of the Hungarian king, Matthias Corvinus. But instead of sanctuary, he found shackles. Matthias had received forged letters, supposedly showing Vlad negotiating with the Ottomans. Whether Matthias believed them or merely found them convenient, Vlad was imprisoned, and for the next 12 years, the Impaler would languish in captivity. But even in prison, Vlad's legend grew. Stories of his brutal justice spread through Europe. The Germans published lurid pamphlets, tales of feasts among impaled corpses, boiling traitors alive, and monstrous vengeance became widespread. Vlad was no longer a man, he was myth. Over time, Matthias saw value in restoring Vlad's name. He allowed him to marry a Hungarian noblewoman, possibly a relative of the king, and gave him some measure of freedom. Eventually, as Ottoman pressure mounted in the late 1470s, the time came to unleash the dragon again. With Ottoman power encroaching in Wallachia, in chaos, Vlad was released and restored to the throne. But his final reign would be short and bloody. Before the year ended, Vlad III disappeared in battle. Some say he fell during a skirmish against the Ottomans. Others claim he was betrayed and assassinated by his own men. His severed head, they say, was sent to Mehmed in Constantinople, proof that the dragon had finally fallen. Vlad III's final death remains cloaked in mystery. His body was never definitively recovered, but his legend only grew, not just in the Balkans, but across all of Europe. To the Germans he was a demon, the Impaler Prince, a tyrant who drank blood and feasted beside corpses. To the Romanians, however, Vlad was something else, a folk hero, a man who crushed crime, defended his land from Islamic conquest, and refused to kneel before the Sultan. Even today, some villages in Transylvania and Wallachia hold stories of Vlad as a protector, ruthless but just, terrifying but necessary. Centuries later, in Victorian England, an Irish author named Bram Stoker stumbled across the name Dracula while researching Eastern European legends for a novel. He discovered that Dracula meant son of the dragon, and also in Romanian folklore, son of the devil. Stoker never visited Romania, but the fragments of Vlad's life, his cruelty, his battlefield cunning, the eerie forests of Transylvania were more than enough. The result? Count Dracula, a fictional vampire cursed with immortality, ruling from the shadows of a Carpathian castle, a being inspired in part by Vlad, though the vampire bears little resemblance to the real man. Today, Vlad III exists somewhere between history and horror. The man and the monster have become one. Vlad the Impaler ruled with iron and fire. He left behind no peaceful legacy, only tales carved into the land, whispered in darkened taverns, and immortalized in ink and blood.